Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. I'm Sarah, and today we're talking about a topic that affects all of us jobs. More specifically, why some states seem to have so many jobs while others struggle.
And I'm Mike, that's right, Sarah. If you've ever wondered why places like California, Texas, or New York seem to have booming job markets while other states might be falling behind, you're not alone. Today, we're going to break down the factors that create these differences.
Exactly. And this isn't just about numbers on a chart. These differences affect real people's lives, where they choose to live, how much money they make, and what opportunities they have.
I've always been fascinated by this. You know, my cousin moved from West Virginia to Texas a few years ago specifically for job opportunities, and his experience got me thinking about what makes some states job magnets.
That's a perfect example, Mike. Let's dive into the main factors that create these job differences across states. I think one of the biggest is economic diversity. States with many different types of businesses tend to have stronger job markets.
Absolutely, think about California. They have tech in Silicon Valley, entertainment in Hollywood, agriculture in the Central Valley, tourism along the coast. When one industry has a down year, others can pick up the slack.
And compare that to states that depend heavily on just one or two industries. When I visited Wyoming, I learned how tied their economy is to oil, gas, and mining. When those industries struggle, the whole state feels it.
I saw the same thing growing up in Michigan. The auto industry had such a huge impact that when car sales dropped, everyone from restaurant workers to house builders lost jobs too.
That's why diversification is so important. States like Texas have worked hard to expand beyond oil and gas into tech, healthcare, and manufacturing. And it's paid off with more stable job growth.
But economic diversity doesn't just happen by itself, right? There need to be workers with the right skills to fill those different jobs.
Great point. That brings us to another key factor: education and workforce development. States that invest in education tend to have stronger job markets.
Massachusetts is a perfect example. They've consistently ranked at the top for education, and they've built a knowledge economy around universities like MIT and Harvard. Companies want to be near all those smart graduates.
Yes, and it's not just four-year colleges that matter. States like North Carolina have invested heavily in community college systems that train workers for specific needs in manufacturing and tech.
I visited a community college in Tennessee that works directly with local auto plants. Students learn exactly the skills needed for jobs that are waiting for them. The state paid for much of the training program because they knew it would lead to more jobs.
That kind of partnership between schools, businesses, and government can make a huge difference. In states where these connections are weak, you often see a skills gap, jobs that exist but can't be filled because workers don't have the right training.
Another thing I've noticed in states with strong job growth is that they tend to make it easier to start and run businesses. The rules and paperwork, I mean.
Yes, the business climate and regulations vary so much from state to state. Some places have worked to cut red tape and speed up the process of opening a business.
Texas is famous for this approach. They pride themselves on fewer regulations and a more business-friendly environment. There's a reason so many companies have moved their headquarters there from places like California.
Though this can be controversial, some argue that fewer regulations might mean less protection for workers or the environment. There's always a balance to find.
True, and different states make different choices about that balance. Some, like Minnesota, have more regulations but also invest heavily in education and quality of life, which attracts certain types of businesses.
I think that's an important point. There's not just one path to job growth. States can succeed with different approaches if they're thoughtful about their specific strengths and challenges.
Speaking of strengths, we can't ignore geography and natural resources. Some states simply have natural advantages that others don't.
Absolutely. Alaska has oil, West Virginia has coal, California has perfect weather for growing food. These resources shaped their economies from the beginning.
And it's not just what's in the ground. Location matters too. States with busy ports like New York, California, and Washington have a natural advantage for trade jobs.
Or look at tourism. States like Florida and Hawaii have natural beauty that brings visitors and creates countless jobs in hotels, restaurants, and entertainment.
But natural resources can be both a blessing and a curse. States that rely too heavily on one resource can struggle when prices drop, or when the world starts moving away from that resource.
Coal states have felt this painfully in recent years. As the country uses less coal for energy, states like Kentucky and West Virginia have lost thousands of mining jobs.
That's why the most successful states find ways to build on their natural advantages while also developing new strengths. Look at how Pittsburgh transformed from a steel city to a center for healthcare, education, and tech.
Great example. Another key factor is infrastructure: roads, bridges, airports, internet access. States that invest in these things make it easier for businesses to operate and grow.
I remember visiting rural areas where poor internet access made it almost impossible for new businesses to succeed. In today's digital economy, that's like not having electricity was 100 years ago.
Exactly. States that have invested in broadband access, like Tennessee with their Rural Internet Initiative, have seen new opportunities open up in smaller communities.
And it's not just digital infrastructure. States with good highways, railways, and airports make it easier for companies to move their products around. That's a big reason why places like Chicago became major business hubs.
Infrastructure also includes things like reliable electricity and water systems. When Texas had those major power outages during the winter storm in 2021, it cost businesses billions and damaged the state's reputation.
You know what else varies dramatically between states? Taxes. Some states have much higher tax rates than others, and that affects where businesses choose to locate.
It's true. States like Florida, Texas, and Nevada have no state income tax, which they advertise heavily when trying to attract both businesses and workers.
But again, it's not as simple as lower taxes equal more jobs. States with higher taxes, like Massachusetts or Minnesota, often use that money to fund better schools, healthcare, and infrastructure, which can also attract certain businesses and workers.
Right. A company like Amazon isn't just looking for the lowest tax bill. They need a well-educated workforce, good transportation, and places where their employees want to live.
That brings up the cost of living, which varies dramatically across states. Housing costs in California or New York can be triple or quadruple what they are in states like Ohio or Indiana.
And that affects both businesses and workers. Companies have to pay higher salaries in expensive states, which increases their costs. But workers might still end up with less spending money, even with those higher salaries.
I've seen this with friends who have moved from California to Texas or from New York to North Carolina. Their salaries went down, but their standard of living went up because housing was so much more affordable.
This cost difference has become even more important now that remote work is more common. People can keep their high-paying jobs, but move to less expensive states.
We're seeing this play out right now. States like Idaho, Utah, and Arizona are seeing huge population growth as people leave more expensive coastal states.
And speaking of what makes a place attractive to live, quality of life is becoming increasingly important in job creation. States with good schools, low crime, outdoor recreation, and cultural attractions can draw both workers and businesses.
Absolutely, Colorado has used its beautiful mountains and outdoor lifestyle to attract a young, educated workforce. That, in turn, has drawn companies who want to hire those workers.
Utah has done the same thing. They've built their economic development strategy around quality of life, particularly for families. They highlight their national parks, ski resorts, and family-friendly communities.
Even in cities, quality of life matters. Austin, Nashville, and Raleigh have all used their music scenes, restaurants, and overall coolness factor to attract young workers, which then attracts companies.
It becomes a positive cycle. Jobs attract people, people attract more jobs, and on it goes. But the opposite can happen too. A negative cycle where job losses lead to population decline, which leads to even fewer jobs.
That brings up another key factor, population trends. States gaining population typically gain jobs, while those losing population often lose jobs too.
The Sun Belt states, from North Carolina across to Arizona, have seen both population and job growth for decades now. Meanwhile, many states in the Northeast and Midwest have struggled with population loss.
Though there are exceptions, some states like Minnesota and Massachusetts have maintained job growth despite slower population growth because they've focused on high-value industries and education.
And immigration plays a huge role too. States that attract international immigrants often see stronger job growth, both because the immigrants fill job openings and because they start businesses at higher rates than the general population.
California, New York, Texas, and Florida have all benefited enormously from immigration. In many of their cities, immigrant communities have revitalized entire neighborhoods with new businesses.
History matters too. The economic past of a state shapes its present in powerful ways. Some states are still dealing with the after effects of decisions made decades ago.
Like how the South was primarily agricultural for so long, which affected its development of infrastructure, education systems, and urban centers compared to the industrial North.
Or how some Midwest states built their economies around manufacturing jobs that provided good wages without requiring college degrees. When those jobs left, they had to reinvent themselves, which isn't easy.
But history isn't destiny. Some states have successfully reinvented themselves. Look at North Carolina's Research Triangle Park. They transformed from a tobacco and textile economy to a hub for research and technology.
And speaking of technology, innovation is perhaps the biggest job creator in today's economy. States that foster innovation through research universities, startup supports, and access to capital tend to see more job growth.
California is the obvious example with Silicon Valley, but innovation hubs have developed in many states, from the Research Triangle in North Carolina to the Route 128 corridor around Boston to Austin, Texas.
Even in more rural states, innovation in agriculture is creating new opportunities. Farms are using advanced technology that requires new skills and creates different types of jobs than traditional farming.
You know, as we talk about all these factors, I keep thinking about how they're all connected. Good education systems help create innovation, which creates jobs, which attracts more people, which improves the tax base, which can fund better infrastructure.
Exactly. States that are doing well often have many of these positive factors working together, and states that struggle often face multiple challenges at once.
Let's talk about some success stories, states that have done particularly well at job creation in recent years. Texas has been at or near the top of job growth rankings for over a decade now.
Texas has really used every tool in the box: low taxes, limited regulations, major infrastructure investments, and aggressive recruitment of businesses from other states.
Utah is another interesting case. They've had some of the strongest job growth in the country, while maintaining a high quality of life and relatively affordable housing compared to coastal states.
Washington State has built a diverse economy with strengths in aerospace, technology, agriculture, and trade. Their focus on international exports has created jobs across many different sectors.
And Tennessee has used its central location, low cost of living, and investments in workforce training to become a manufacturing powerhouse, particularly in the auto industry.
On the flip side, what about states that have struggled with job creation? What lessons can we learn from them?
I think the biggest lesson is the danger of depending too much on a single industry. West Virginia's reliance on coal, Louisiana's dependence on oil and gas, and even Michigan's focus on auto manufacturing all created vulnerability when those industries face challenges.
Another challenge is when states cut too deeply into education and infrastructure during tough budget times. Those short-term savings can create long-term problems for economic development.
Rural states face special challenges too. As agriculture has become more mechanized, it provides fewer jobs. Without new industries to replace those jobs, many rural communities have seen population loss and economic decline.
This rural-urban divide exists within states too. Even in states with strong overall job growth, rural areas often lag behind urban centers. This creates political tensions and challenges for state policy.
That's such an important point. When we talk about state job growth, we're usually looking at averages that can hide huge differences within the state.
Exactly. California has booming tech centers in the Bay Area, but high unemployment in parts of the Central Valley. Texas has thriving cities but struggling rural communities. These internal differences can be as big as the differences between states.
So if you're a state leader wanting to improve job growth, what should you do? What policies actually work?
I think the evidence points to a few key strategies. First, invest in education at all levels, from early childhood through universities and technical training. The states with the best educated workers tend to have the strongest economies.
Second, build and maintain good infrastructure. This is the foundation that allows businesses to operate efficiently. That means not just roads and bridges, but broadband internet, reliable utilities, and public transportation.
Third, diversify your economy as much as possible. States that rely too heavily on one industry are taking a huge risk. Economic development efforts should aim to build several strong sectors.
Fourth, focus on quality of life. Clean air and water, good schools, safe communities, parks, and cultural attractions. These things matter to workers making decisions about where to live, especially in the age of remote work.
And fifth, foster innovation and entrepreneurship. Most new jobs come from new and growing businesses, not from established giants. States that make it easier to start and grow a business see more job creation.
I'd add a sixth, regional cooperation. Sometimes states get so competitive with each other that they miss opportunities to work together on bigger projects that could benefit an entire region.
That's a great point. The states around the Great Lakes, for example, could probably accomplish more by marketing themselves as a region with shared water resources and manufacturing expertise than by fighting each other for every factory.
So as we wrap up, what should listeners take away from our discussion today?
I think the big takeaway is that job creation isn't random or mysterious. There are clear factors that make some states more successful than others. And these factors are largely the result of policy choices and investments made over time.
And if you're thinking about your own career or where to live, understanding these patterns can help you make better decisions. Look at not just where jobs exist today, but where the conditions are right for future growth.
Exactly. A state with good schools, diverse industries, solid infrastructure, and an attractive quality of life is more likely to have job opportunities in the future, even as the economy changes.
And remember that within every state, there are communities doing better or worse than the state average. Austin is different from rural Texas. New York City is different from upstate New York.
That's so important. Your specific skills, industry, and preferences matter too. The best state for jobs overall might not be the best state for your particular situation.
I also hope listeners take away that these patterns can change. States that are struggling today can implement policies that create better conditions for job growth tomorrow.
Absolutely. North Carolina transformed from a tobacco and textile economy to a technology and research hub. Pittsburgh reinvented itself after steel declined. Economic reinvention is difficult but definitely possible.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From natural resources to education, from taxes to quality of life, we've explored the many factors that explain why some states have more jobs than others.
Thanks for joining us for this fascinating topic. If you're enjoying our discussions, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with friends who might be interested. Next week, we'll be diving into another important issue affecting our everyday lives.
So until then, I'm Mike.
And I'm Sarah. Thanks for listening.